You know, in Chicago, the city itself is the canvas. The walls, they tell a story. A story of rebellion, of culture, of community. But it's not always a pretty picture. It's also a story of conflict, a full-on battle for the soul of the city's neighborhoods, fought with everything from spray cans to power washers.
And this right here is the core of it. Is it incredible public art that brings a community to life? Or is it just vandalism, a nuisance that needs to be scrubbed away? For decades, this is the tug-of-war Chicago's been caught in.
And look, this isn't just some artsy, philosophical debate. We're talking about real money. The city of Chicago spends about $5 million every single year just on graffiti removal. That's a huge price tag for a question that has no easy answer. What or who belongs on these walls?
So to really get what's going on, you've got to go back to the roots. Because long before street art was ever considered an asset, it was a tool for the rebels, a weapon for the disenfranchised. It was a way to scream when you felt like the world wasn't listening.
I mean, think about it. Chicago has this long, complicated history of segregation, of working-class struggles. For so many marginalized communities, the public walls became one of the only platforms they had to talk about rights, about unity, to create a visual identity all on their own.
This whole scene didn't just pop up overnight. After World War II, you started seeing more elaborate stuff. But the real game changer? 1967, with something called the Wall of Respect. Then the 70s hit, and boom, graffiti and hip-hop culture became totally inseparable. The city pushed back, and hard, eventually banning the sale of spray paint in 1992.
Okay, so this Wall of Respect was a huge deal. It was way more than just a painting. It was a declaration. Created by Black artists in the Bronzeville neighborhood, it celebrated Black heroes and became this incredible symbol of pride. And even though it was tragically destroyed in a fire, its impact was massive. It basically kicked off a national movement, proving that art could belong to the people on their own terms.
And that legacy is everywhere in Chicago today. The city is basically an open-air museum with hundreds of murals telling all kinds of stories. So, you ready? Let's go on a little virtual tour of some of the absolute must-sees.
All right, first stop, the Wabash Arts Corridor. And you literally cannot miss this one. It's a 9-story tall tribute to the absolute legend, the founder of contemporary Chicago blues, Muddy Waters, and the artist, the world-famous Brazilian street artist Eduardo Cobra. This right here is Cobra's signature style. He does these monumental, prism-like portraits that are just bursting with color and energy. His work is so distinct, once you've seen it, you recognize it anywhere. He turns entire buildings into landmarks.
Okay, next up, we're jumping over to Pilsen, the historic heart of the city's Mexican-American community. And check this out. Artist Hector Duarte literally turned his own home into this sprawling masterpiece about the immigrant struggle.
This symbolism here is just so powerful. It's called Gulliver in Wonderland, and it shows this giant immigrant tangled up in barbed wire. It's a deeply personal statement about identity and the fight for freedom. And get this, it's just one of over 50 murals Duarte has created in the neighborhood. And of course, you've probably seen this one all over social media. We're in Logan Square looking at the iconic Greetings from Chicago mural. A little fun fact, this was actually the very first one in what became a whole nationwide series of these cool postcard murals.
The really cool part is when you get up close and look inside the letters. It's packed with all these little Chicago Easter eggs. You've got the Willis Tower, the city flag, a nod to the Cubs, the local monument. It's a true love letter to the city, painted right on a wall.
So, this brings up a huge question, right? How in the world did we go from banning spray paint to celebrating these murals as major tourist attractions? Well, it happened when street art stopped being seen as an outlaw act and started being seen as an economic asset.
Yeah, back in the 90s, a light bulb went off. Neighborhoods started to realize, hey, this art that's part of our soul, it could actually be a tool for revitalization. We can use it to put ourselves on the map, to bring people in. And you know what? It worked. The benefits became undeniable. Murals made buildings beautiful, they drew in tourists, they even discouraged random tagging. You had Chicago artists like Hebrew Brantley blowing up, with collectors like Jay-Z buying their work. It got so big that now, some business districts actually use taxpayer money to fund new public art. But, and this is a really big but, there's a dark side to all this success. The very art that gave a community its identity, its voice, it turned into a double-edged sword. It became a key player in the painful process of gentrification.
And it's this cycle that we see happen over and over again. Step 1. Artists make a neighborhood beautiful and cool. Step 2. Other people notice how cool it is and want to live there. Step 3. Developers swoop in with high-end condos and businesses. And Step 4, the heartbreaking part, rent and property values shoot through the roof, and the original residents, the people who gave the neighborhood its character, get priced out.
And if you think that's just some abstract theory, let me tell you about the Casa Aztlán mural in Pilsen. This thing, painted in the 70s with portraits of Latino heroes, it wasn't just art. It was a cultural monument. It defined the community.
So the community center it was on had to close. A developer bought the building to turn it into condos, and then in 2017, they just painted over the whole thing. Covered decades of history in a flat coat of gray paint. The community was devastated. It felt like their entire history was being erased right in front of them. That one act lit a fire. As a local news station put it, the mural's destruction became the symbol of gentrification in Pilsen. Now, after a ton of community protest, the developer did eventually agree to have the mural restored. But the battle lines were drawn. The fight was out in the open.
So, where does that leave us today? Well, that battle for the walls is still very much raging. And artists, because they're artists, are always finding new, inventive ways to leave their mark on the city.
I mean, you've got to love the creativity here. Take a guy like Jim Boschor. He looks at Chicago's infamous potholes and doesn't see an annoyance. He sees a canvas. He fills them with these beautiful, intricate mosaics. He is literally turning a civic headache into a piece of unexpected public art. How cool is that?
From the Wall of Respect to mosaics and potholes, Chicago's street art has always been a mirror for the city itself. Resilient, creative, and always evolving. But as it moves from the margins into the mainstream, it leaves us with this one final critical question. In a city where the walls tell the stories, who gets to hold the pen, and who gets to decide what story is told next?